Thank you. Mr. Huelskamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doctor, I appreciate you being here. I had a couple follow-up questions on earlier discussion, I think, from one of my colleagues in reference to the stimulus package and why it didn't work, and you had some comments, but I want to refresh your memory. The administration and I presume the CBO had predicted the same outcome or similar outcome, predicted that roughly the unemployment rate today would be 5.7% if that had worked. As the economist, most economists, I guess, in town that were promoting that, of course, today it's 8.2% is the actual unemployment rate. The delta, the difference is 13 million Americans are not working today that were projected. You said that the economic recession was worse than was figured. Well, can you tell me what numbers were missed? The reason I'm asking this is it's not a gotcha question. I'm trying to find out who in this town actually does an accurate job of predicting, because the folks that said we need to spend more money were very, very wrong. And can you tell me where you and others were wrong as far as the economic figures you were using for that type of projection?
Yes, Congressman, those are good questions. Economic forecasting is very hard. We release a regular update of our success at that, and I think the good way to phrase that, to summarize that, is that we're no worse than other economic forecasters. But I put it that way deliberately. It's very hard to do. I think in our case, and for many people, for many forecasters, the U.S. has not experienced a recession of the magnitude of the one we've just lived through since the Depression. We had become used to having infrequent and fairly mild recessions, and we and other forecasters expected this to be like that. In fact, people who have studied more carefully downturns in other countries following financial crises were saying from the beginning that in this sort of situation, we should be looking for a much longer and more pronounced downturn in this country, and they turn out to have been right. I want to be clear about this effects of the Recovery Act. There is disagreement, as the Chairman noted, among economists about the size of these multipliers. And reflecting that disagreement, we show ranges of estimates. But there is only a small fraction of the profession that thinks that the Recovery Act was not good for the economy. There's a set of economists at the University
and Doctor,
of
I appreciate that. But on what particular figures? Just in general, you're saying that most economists were generally wrong, or were there specific indicators that were missed? Because, and this gets pretty political, because we have folks suggesting, and maybe yourself, that it wasn't big enough, that we should be spending more money, and actually, according to your report on page 34, you suggest that if we could just spend some more money somehow, that's going to grow the economy some more. And after spending $880 billion with a $1.1 trillion cost to pay it back, I just can't figure out what economic indicators were missed to suggest that we should have another stimulus or a bigger stimulus or just spend more money of any type that somehow that's going to grow the economy. What did you and other economists miss specifically that led to this huge jobs deficit between what was projected by the folks that produced the stimulus? I mean, we're talking 13 million Americans would like an answer to say, okay, where did Washington mess up? Because you're saying most economists think it should have worked. It didn't.
Would the gentleman yield for a second? So, would you be?
Yes, sir.
So the question is whether, if I'm not mistaken, Doug, whether the multiplier is above 1 or below 1, and that's where very, very few people say it's below 1. Is that not the case? And then, what was the Bernstein multiplier?
The question of whether the Recovery Act was good for the economy is a question of whether the multiplier is above or below 0.
0. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. 0.
And so, can I just put into the transcript on this regard? There's a collection of economists at the University of Chicago who do a regular survey of distinguished economists at leading universities on issues of public policy to show where the agreements lie in the disagreements.
Whether a dollar spending produces more than a dollar's worth of economic output or less, right? That's basically the question.
So I'll read you the specific question they asked. Because of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, the U.S. unemployment rate was lower at the end of 2010 than it would have been without the stimulus bill.
Now, to Mr. Huelskamp,
can I get the answer to that question?
No, sorry, I thought you did.
That was the question. The question was question with a question mark at the end. The statement, they phrased it as a statement. I'm just quoting it directly. Because of the Recovery Act, the unemployment rate was lower at the end of 2010 than it would have been without the stimulus bill. 80% of the respondents, 80% agreed or strongly agreed with that statement.
Right. So
only 4% disagreed or strongly disagreed.
Right. Meaning positive number versus negative number, 80%.
And I'm not sure if John Taylor's in this group. If he were, I presume he'd be in the 4%. but that is a distinct minority.
Right, so
of
here's
respondents, and
what
our
I think he's
position
getting
is
at.
consistent with the consensus in the profession.
What was the multiplier? I think it was the Bernstein, Romer, I can't recall who came up with the multiplier to generate those stimulus projections. What was that multiplier they used to generate those projections? Was it 2 point something, wasn't it?
I don't know what they did. What we did, and we report.
No, I know, but what he's getting at is, how did they get it so wrong off their projections? And my question is, what was the multiplier that they used, and was that multiplier not outside of the realm of what most economists thought it would have been?
So I just don't know what they used. I know what we did. We went through the literature. We looked at a set of multipliers from the evidence the economists have generated. We reported what those multipliers are.
And yours was 1 point something, right?
Well, for every sort of provision, the multiplier is different, and we've talked about the differences. I think for the Recovery Act as a whole, and of course a part of the Recovery Act was tax cuts,
Right.
all spending increases.
Temporary.
I think in the end we thought the multiplier on average across those provisions was about 1,
Right.
very rough terms. And that's what we've been reporting in our
Right.
regular reports.
And to his point, I'm doing this off the top of my head. If I'm not mistaken, it was the Bernstein-Romer multiplier. I forgot who. I think it was Bernstein. That was 2 something, was it not? Joyce, do you know the answer to that? No.
It may have been. I just
Okay.
don't know.
I think that's what he's trying to get.
We are not trying to.
No, I understand that. I just.
rebut what they do. We did our own analysis, and I can speak to that. I can't speak to what the administration did.
But Mr. Chairman, just since we're now over the time,
Yeah,
I mean, the question
but
is
it's
pretty
an
simple. The
interesting
question
topic.
is whether or not the recovery bill, the stimulus bill, helped the economy relative to not doing a stimulus. And
Right.
the answer from CBO and 80% of the economists is that it helped the economy.
Right, and what Mr. Huelskamp is getting at is the claims that were used to sell the stimulus were based on a multiplier that clearly did not materialize, which was much higher than what CBO claimed it would be. We'll go to the record and figure out what that was. I think it was 2.1 or something like that.
Sell it. We started doing our analysis.
We're not suggesting you're selling
February
anything. We're
of
suggesting
2009.
the administration was selling something, and they oversold it. Where?
But just to be, I mean, I just invite everybody to look at the Congressional Budget Office analysis on this exact issue that's been raised a couple times, which made clear that as a result of the recovery bill, we've saved or created over 3 million jobs. They talk about it on a year-by-year basis, and for those people that have those jobs, it's pretty meaningful.
And the administration claimed unemployment would never get above 8, that millions more jobs would have been created, and they plugged in a multiplier that very few economists support or justify. Mr. McClintock.
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, what we've,
Chairman, can I just add one more thing? Just to,
not on my time.
Congressman Huelskamp, we are doing a report right now on the slow recovery. We are trying, in fact, ourselves to understand better where we went wrong in an effort to improve our forecast going forward. And we're writing this up in a way that will be available to you and your colleagues, I hope, within a few months, as part of our preparation for our August forecast update.
Mr. Chairman, I request 30 seconds to close.
No, I actually started the mantra after your time expired.
No, you did not. I gave you my time. I didn't.
Oh, you're right.
give you
Okay,
my time
go
for a
ahead.
minute
Go
and a half.
ahead. Sorry.
No, I appreciate that. And, you know, I wasn't around here, and I'm going with the numbers that were provided by the administration. It says it's 5.7%. That's in writing. It was so far off, it might have been different multipliers. But as we go forward, and I look forward to that report, one thing I will ask as well to put in the report, if you can make an estimate, as Mrs. Black indicated, what's the economic impact of uncertainty? Because I'm hearing that from job creators, and that's nowhere in your report, and that's a difficult thing to measure. With that, I yield back my time.
Thank you. I apologize. Thanks.